We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
All right. I see him over in the bottom of my screen. I don't know where he is on your screen. I'm sure I can move him around if I understood this Zoom thing a little bit better. But anyway, everyone knows Chris these days from the Aerobic Capacity course. Chris, if you can find Miles, he's already wearing your t-shirt, as Tony pointed out. So
beautiful. Boy, look at you.
As Jersey Tony mentioned, it's like wearing the t-shirt to the concert. But anyway, we have a lot of fans of you in here for probably mostly what you've done in the CrossFit world. And I think it sometimes goes underappreciated what you've done outside of the CrossFit world too, including your own athletic performance. Maybe that's a question we can start with of not quite yet, but is it frustrating for all of your achievements to be what you've helped other people do, forgetting the fact that you too are quite the athlete? But I just want to welcome you to this, I was going to say show, but I guess it is kind of like the Tony show at times. But this is our coaches development group. Typically on Tuesdays, we do some lessons. We've gone through many different things such as teaching, seeing, the air squat, etc. And then on Thursdays, we do Q&As where we've been lucky to have some amazing guests. You now being one of the many, from Chuck Carswell to Maliolo. Who else have we had? Anybody good, guys? I can't remember. It's been
Denise Thomas.
Denise Thomas.
He's the best.
Best.
Denise Thomas.
We've had some amazing. We got James Hobart on next week. So, hey, welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day down. You're still in Tennessee?
I am. Yes. Yeah. No, it's nice to be here. It's good. That nice group of people. Just so everyone knows, I didn't get any insights on what we're talking about. So this will be good. I like that.
Well, that's how I like to do my thing, but I don't know what we're talking about either, because like I said, Thursdays are Q&As, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. You are, in my opinion, one of the best storytellers in CrossFit, which I think is what makes you a great teacher as well. Greg Amundsen once said, if you can tell a story, you'll get people to remember. See, and I remember that quote because he told the story. So it's true. I love how you relate everything back to that. So, but let me kick off with my question, and you guys know the deal. Put your virtual hands up. Federico, I know you have. Federico is in Italy. I don't know where he is on your screen. Oh, he's wearing the shirt too. I just know you wearing the shirt too. Yeah.
It's my favorite country. I'm so sad I can't be there right now.
So let me give you a little insight too, Chris. We've had some amazing guests. I haven't done it justice. Coach Bergner was on, plenty of great people. And every time I mention the guest, Federico gets very excited, like very, very excited. But when I mention you specifically, he lost it. The only analogy I can make to give it justice is when you've been away for a week, you come home to see your dog, so excited that it pees on you. That was like what Federico was like, just peeing everywhere. So, is that fair, Federico?
Yeah, I was waiting for Chris to come in Italy in Civitanova to see him for the second time, but the COVID wasn't fair, and he would.
Yeah, that I love that whole place by Civitanova. I love it, and all the way down to Bari, and the gym down there, Inc and Kilos, that all the way up into the north into Tuscany. Yeah, someday I will live there someday.
You're kind of like the Grateful Dead. Like Federico's following you around, just seeing you. Over and over. He's got a van. He's selling veggie burritos out back. I'd
follow him because he's where I want to be.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So before I see Miles, I see Tony UP with some hands up. Would you mind answering that question that I threw out there? I mean, you are a great athlete. I mean, you came in podium in the Ironman multiple times, yet 90% of the people that recognize you these days, it's because you've helped other people become great athletes. Does that piss you off?
No, I mean, I look back, once you do something like that, no one can ever take it away. And that's really cool. But it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. So long ago, it probably, doesn't count. And so I don't think about that. I draw on those experiences and those days, and it's a huge source of confidence that I can rely on, especially when, there's not a lot of information or direction in where to go in terms of programming. And so there's a lot of pluses behind it, but in terms of looking back that's not my thing.
Well, I just rewatched my high school junior year sectional championship match before I got on here to get fired up. So I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah,
it was a great time. I mean, my life was so good. I was, in my early 20s. I mean, imagine this, you're in your early 20s. And just so you guys know, so what I was a good swimmer. I was a really good swimmer. I typically would come out of the water first in most triathlons, had the swim record for a while in Kona. So that was a huge plus for me. And one of the things while going through business school, so I originally wanted to get into accounting and be an accountant. And the reason why I switched into finance and marketing was because I didn't understand theory in the profession of accounting. And so my last year I left, but here I was in college in a very difficult school, and I've always have done well in school. I've always had good grades, but I got into the sport of triathlons and I had some success, and school at times was boring. And so to travel the world and in my 20s while going to college, it was really a cool thing. And one of the benefits that I found by competing that dovetailed with my education was sponsorships. One of the things that I never did was hire an agent, hire an attorney. I did all of my negotiating. I made a lot of really bad mistakes. I made a lot of commitments with shady people, and I learned a lot from those trial and error. But one of the things that I did was I recognized right away that companies, they expect something in return. Just because you have great performances, it's quid pro quo. So what are you going to give me? What is the return that you're giving me for the sponsorship, whether it's product or dollars? And when it came down to dollars, they wanted they wanted your first kid. And so what I did is I turned around and I said, what they want is they want advertising, they want promotion, they want reach. And the only reach back then was magazines, newspapers, and TV. And so I put together a deal where I said that for every second, and this was back when we had videotape, for every second I was on local television, national television, or international television, I would get paid a certain dollar amount. So if I didn't get on TV and you didn't have to pay anything, I would support you and endorse you and do all the requirements. Well, the thing is that because I always came out of the water first, if it was a televised event, they had to show the leader. And so the way I made my money back then was I would do events and swim as hard as I could. I'd make sure I got out of the water first. I'd ride the bike as hard as I possibly could, stay in first until I got past, knew the cameras were off, and the obligation I had to finish the event. And so I'd bring it home. And imagine making literally tens of thousands of dollars when you're 20, 21 years old, going to college. It was It was a good time for sure. So that's how I bought my first house, and through that experience. And so I look back on it, it was great in terms of accomplishments, but in terms of education, knowledge, it was incredible. And so that's what I take a night when I have conversations with athletes today. I always want them to realize that athletic side will end, and do you have something to parlay it into?
I was really excited when Gold's Gym hired me for $8 an hour. So yeah, I can understand where that tens of thousands is coming from. Are those the Matt Frazier iconic paintings behind you?
Yeah. So I was doing a call with him, and he's like, "Do you really nothing back there?" And he's all, "Hold on." And yeah.
Should I give him a call too? Is that what that?
Yeah. Yeah. Go. No, well, he walked him on over here. So he lives like 1 minute from here. Yeah. He actually might come over here in the middle of this call.
Oh, well, I'm sure Federico will be very pleased with that. All right. Let's open it up to some questions. Tony, UP. So Tony is UP because he's in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Hey, really happy you're able to join us today, Chris. Really psyched for this. So I know.
Forgive the mustache. Forgive the mustache.
Probably like many people here, I have a lot of athletes who like to do long distance running kind of on the side or as their primary sport. And right now it's the middle of winter, so it's not a huge deal. But we do have several people come spring, come summer that like to run a lot more in addition to their CrossFit training. Do you have any specific recommendations on how to best maximize their time spent running in addition to doing the CrossFit, like specific days that they should be doing a VO2 max day or a speed or a threshold day, just to make sure that they're not wasting their time just doing long, slow distance and get the best results that they want to get from running while still doing CrossFit? And then part two to that is I'm a cross country skier. So selfishly, I want to know if that same recommendation would carry over to cross country skiing so that I can maximize my own training, cross country skiing, while still doing CrossFit 5-6 times a week.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the key really is to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the athlete, and as well as their goals. And then also look at their type of training and create the balance across the movement of running as well as what they do in the gym. And so the key really is that the athlete, if they don't have any specific goals and they just are looking to maximize fitness, then we have to look at the experience level of the athlete as well. So if they are an entry-level athlete, maybe have lost their fitness and want to use running to help them accelerate, let's say, weight loss, running is a very good solution. The problem is that there's so much information now pushing high-intensity interval training and its effectiveness on, let's say, driving, like you said, VO2 max. The thing about it is that, yeah, that does work, but it's not the best protocol for a new runner. That new runner, so long as they are at a heart rate roughly 60% of their maximum, they're going to create a VO2 max adaptation. So what you want to do is you want to start them on really doing anything and not stressing about intensity. Time is the key. Now, ultimately, everybody is going to hit a plateau in their VO2. It's a hereditary genetic limitation. And so what you need to recognize is that, yeah, high intensity will drive you to that, and it will happen in a short amount of time. The bulk of your VO2 you can capture in 12 weeks. So then where's the rest of the improvement? It's through your sustainable speed, your lactate threshold. And that's where this moderate intensity comes in. For you and someone who has some mediocre level of experience in running, without a doubt, this is the highest opportunity. And this is where you should spend the majority of your time, at that moderate level of intensity. Moderate would be a speed that would be somewhere around a speed that you could hold between 20 and 40 minutes at maximum effort. So most people, it would be like your 5K pace. And that's where I would target. The more time you spend at that particular intensity, the more it will drive up or improve your lactate threshold or your maximum sustainable speed. And that's where I find the most value. Without a doubt, that is the number one stimulus that I have every athlete I coach target, without a doubt. Now, I mentioned earlier, and just touch on it briefly, you have to know the strengths and the weakness of the athlete. If they are a speed, strength, power athlete, a sprinter, then more than likely their weakness is going to be their aerobic intensity, right? Their easy intensity. And I define easy as 180 minus your heart, 180 minus your age. On myself, I'm on the other side. I'm an endurance athlete. My recovery is exceptionally good. I could work long time domains. My speed is a limitation. So what I need to do is I need to do high intensity interval training. It's the maximum value of my time. As an example, Conor McGregor, in my opinion, and I've done a lot of looking into Conor McGregor, and one of the things that Conor McGregor does is he is a explosive power-based athlete, and all of his training is anaerobic high intensity interval work. And the problem is that Conor lacks cardio. If you take him out of that first 5-minute round, it's over. And he knows it. His confidence drops every time when it goes into the second round, third round, and getting slaughtered by Khabib in the fourth round. I mean, that's what happens to him. The problem that Conor has is what most CrossFitters struggle with. They think high intensity interval training is the solution. That's what Conor does. And what that does is accelerates his rate of fatigue as he progresses into longer time domains. So an example, what I mean by that, you take Rich Froning. Rich Froning, when I started with him, he ran a lap around the track in 1 minute, and he could run a mile in 6 minutes. Jason Khalipa was slower than him in both of those. So he ran a mile, and his mile was roughly 3 seconds slower, and his 400 was roughly 3 seconds slower. But what's interesting is when you look at those results and you look at the slope, the rate of fatigue between those two distances and speeds, Jason Khalipa, when I started with him in 2012, had a better fatigue factor than Rich Froning did. Meaning, if it went long enough, Jason would have beat him. And that's the thing, is that if you're always, let's say, Conor McGregor focusing on speed, it makes that fatigue factor even bigger. So essentially what Conor's doing is he is making his weakness, which is going into the deeper rounds, worse. And that's the problem, is that you have to identify what is that weakness, because if you don't get it right, you're going to make their fitness worse. So same thing would hold true with cross-country skiing. Same thing. Remember, it's two things. It's the intensity, right? The metabolic system, the energy, right? You're training that. You're training your body's ability to move and utilize oxygen. But remember, it's also the muscles.
I was going to say Conor McGregor also needs to learn how to check low calf kicks. But
yeah, that's another thing that's really interesting about Conor, isn't it? Is that where was his arsenal of defenses? And what was interesting to me is that, yeah, you get good balance and stability with that long step, but it exposes you. And why didn't he shorten his stance? Ignoring the checking of it, but shorten the stance. And what's really interesting is that when Conor McGregor runs, he overstrides. He has a huge heel strike, but in the ring, where's his foot strike? His foot strike is on the ball of his foot. He is essentially in training. He is teaching something that he doesn't do in the ring. It's not specific, and he's hurting himself in that way. You have to do movement and intensities that are specific to the targeted adaptation or the targeted movement.
So with everything you just said, it sounds like it would be wise for these guys as box owners, as coaches, to implement some longer days, something that, we preach this high intensity, which typically the shorter it is, the more intense you can make it. We need these longer days, be it to improve your running or, cross-country skiing, but more so just so you have that in your arsenal.
Yeah, you need to create a range of gears. Remember, every single intensity in any movement utilizes different muscle groups. So if you think about it, you do a 10-second sprint, you have full recruitment, right? You will recruit all of your muscle fibers, everything from the slowest of the slow to the fast of the fast. But now let's slow it all the way down and talk about walking speed. You're not going to recruit your fast twitch fibers for walking because there's not enough force. So what you want to do is you want to create this range of gears. You have to create this range of gears. And what you want to do is you want to create efficiencies through practice of it. All right. That's the goal. The more you practice or more time you spend working that speed, the better the muscles will be at that particular intensity. They will be more efficient at consumption of your oxygen. And so we don't need to just do long time domain workouts. You can do it to where they're doing a high intensity interval and then they're doing an active recovery, let's say jog to the end of the street and back. And you know what? Take as much time on that as you want. That's where you can get a mental break. And you as a coach, you're outsmarting them, right? Take as much time. I mean, if you got some kid in there and go, what if it takes me 5 minutes? And you go, that's fine. Just no walking. You can zigzag and take 5 minutes, but when you come back in, you're going to go hard. And I want that high intensity back again. But that active recovery is where you're going to build that aerobic base. You're going to build the structure, the ligaments, the tendons, the bones, the time on the feet.
See, Christian, that's why I go for walks every day.
It's nothing wrong with that. That's why, a lot of people, they'll sit there and they'll push the intensity button all the time. And it's like, is that important? Like you guys, anybody that's on here right now, if you said, hey, Chris, I want to improve my lactate threshold in the movement of running, how do you recommend doing it? Well, I would tell you that what we have to do is we have to identify that intensity. Where is it? And then what we want to do is we want to gradually build your capacity, meaning time, at that particular speed. And so how do we do that? Well, let's just say that I have you, and the workout is I want you to accumulate 15 minutes at that particular intensity. My response in the beginning would be, you know what? I'll tell you. I'm going to give you 4 minutes within that 15 minutes to stand around and do nothing. So you have up to 4 minutes within that 15 minutes to regroup if you feel it's too hard, you're feeling gassed. Focus on what you're really trying to get, and that is the accumulation of time. Take, for example, I coach some fast twitch athletes, and they want to build their aerobic base. Problem is, fast twitch athlete, they struggle with long volume, right? They do, because they don't have a lot of slow twitch fibers. So how are they going to do an hour-long run? How are they going to do it? Well, their choice is, they got 3 of them. They could either go really slow, but let's say they want to run with me and hold my pace. Can they do that? Well, they're not going to be able to run at my pace. Why? Because I have a significant percentage of slow twitch fibers, and I will not accumulate lactate as my muscles begin to fail. I won't. But when their muscles fail, the only way for them to maintain their speed is to recruit fast twitch fibers. And as soon as they do that, death is coming. So what should they do if they want to run at my speed? They should chop up their hour and take rest so that they never actually recruit fast twitch fibers. Because remember, the purpose of a long hour easy run is slow twitch fiber development, aerobic development. The other option that they have is they could do a morning run and an evening run and accumulate distance the exact same way. That's how the body works. It will accumulate in that same period of time. And so we could chop it. And so that's why it's like, you got to know a little bit about the background of the athlete. But as coaches, if we know that they're a speed athlete, fast twitch, we need to program slightly different for them to accomplish the same end goal.
I love it. We can obviously dive deeper and deeper into this. Let's get to another question though. Miles. Something's wrong, Miles. Miles. You got your Mickey Mouse filter on. No. We'll come back to you. I know Christine had a question. Christina, and then you dropped out. Do you still have your question?
Yeah, sorry, I got kicked off for a second there. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to be here. You actually sort of already answered my question, but I guess I'll still ask it to see if you have any expansion on my thoughts. So, my situation is more geared towards the athlete who kind of has one pace that they run, you know, in a workout. So typically in a workout, if we're talking about scaling, I might say something like, say if we're doing Nancy, so 5 rounds per time, 400-meter run, 15 overhead squats. If we want to come in under this certain time domain, we want to keep each of those 400-meter runs under 2.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the gauge. So then I would say, if you know that it's going to take you longer than 2.5 minutes to run 400 meters, let's cut that distance. But I fear that by doing that with every workout, it's not encouraging those athletes to actually get any faster. They're just constantly cutting their distance. But I was wondering, like what you were just saying about like, okay, take your time on the run. But like when you come in here, you're picking up that bar and you're giving me high intensity with every single one of those squats. Like, is that better than always scaling that distance? I guess would be my question.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get them better?
That's a good question. I mean, that's where a coach has this incredible power, because you're going to dictate to the athlete what the targeted adaptation is going to be, right? You pick that stimulus. And so if I was in your situation and I'm looking at someone who has to scale this 2.5 minute time domain, right, to run 400 meters, is your, by the way, is your run that you're talking about 400, is it out and back?
Our gym, we like run out in the parking lot and like down the street a little bit, turn around and come back.
Okay, out and back. So here's the thing, is that everything has to be measurable, everything. So you're measuring the 400, and what you're doing is you're giving an athlete the latitude. If they feel they can't do 400 meters in 2.5 minutes, you're giving the latitude to shorten it. The thing is they need to know, if they ran 400 meters last time and the target was 2.5 minutes and they shortened it, what was that distance that they actually went? It has to be measurable, because part of it is that they're never going to benchmark any performance improvements. They're always just going to say, oh, I'm just being short like I was last time. But are you shorter than last time? Or are you a little bit further? And so part of it as a coach, your job is to build their confidence. And the only thing that's going to build their confidence is that they're running a further distance in the same amount of time. And if it's not measurable, then that they're not going to get anything from it. I also feel, though, that you can do workouts that are not based upon distance. So what you're going to do is level the playing field for the slower athlete. And this is really important. We have a tendency in CrossFit to feature the biggest and the baddest and the strongest, and we leave the 99% behind. And the problem is that if you finish last every time, you're probably not going to want to come back. It's going to wear on you. And sometimes it's worthwhile to program based upon time, not distance, so that everybody is going to run 1 minute out and 1 minute back. So in your warm up, what you're going to do is, as a coach, you're going to have a watch and you're going to run everybody 1 minute out. And at the end of the 1 minute, 3, 2, 1, stop. Everybody marks their turnaround spot. So now what the workout's going to be is not a 400. You're going to run to your turnaround, which you established at 1 minute. Everybody is going to turn around at the same relative intensity. And so it's fair. And it's an easy way for you to scale a run based upon ability, creating a relative intensity. I like writing workouts that, if it's for 2 people or a class, workouts are based upon time.
Yeah, I really, really like that, because I feel like the same people get targeted every single time. Like, oh, I have to cut the distance in half because I can't run X.
Right. And the problem is that what happens with them when they go out in the run and they're able to turn around in the middle, their intensity is not going to be the same from round to round to round by going to a set turnaround point. It needs to be the same so that they can see the progression as they move through a multi-round workout. Because you may say, I want your first round to be the fastest, and I'm going to limit your total amount of rest. And so by design, this is a lactate tolerance workout, you're going to naturally get slower and slower and slower. You also might say that we want consistency. And so you may even tell them, you know what? We're going to do a multi-round workout and we're going to get 2 minutes of rest in between each interval. And what we're going to be judging you on is your finishing time consistency from round 2 in comparison to round 1. If you miss by, let's say, 10 seconds or more, you owe 10 burpees. And that is done during the 2 minutes of recovery. That's where a coach can come up with a creative way to create a quality.
I love that too, because you're not necessarily rewarding the best performance. You're rewarding specific performance to that person. And like you said, I think something all these guys understand is it's got to be fun. And if it's Sally comes in every day and she sees that she's last because there's nothing she can do, it's not going to be fun for her. But I love that. And I mean, for you guys, that goes back to your lesson plan too. What's the stimulus of Nancy? Well, like you said, Christina, you're not wrong. It's 12 minutes, but think about the stimulus is also, hey, the run should take this much time. The squat should be unbroken. Mm-hmm. What can we start doing to really dig into that? And I know from my experience, once that garage door is open, you're running a 400, every round, the likelihood of somebody going less increases, right? They see other people starting to lap them. It's like not about them. It's about they start to feel self-conscious and bad. But I think if you took that, this is your distance, no matter what happens, get to it every round, there's going to be less likelihood of kind of self-scaling during a workout.
Yeah, I did. So I just did a workout with Mayhem, and it was, how do you take a running workout and convert it to a ski erg, a row, or a bike erg? How do you do it? Well, the workout was 3 rounds, and it was 3 rounds of 4x400 meters running. And Tasia Persevich, her moderate pace for that workout would have been 2 minutes. So what we do is, in the class, what I had people look at the 2-minute time domain. And now what we're going to do is we're not running, we're going to bike, and it's 2 minutes at this same moderate intensity, right? We've established now time. So everybody's going to go 2 minutes. How do we define this level of intensity? Well, a very easy way to create a moderate intensity is to have people on the bike erg, the ski erg, or the row erg row, let's say, or perform for 10 seconds at maximum intensity, 10 seconds. You take that average wattage for that 10 seconds and divide by 2, and there's your moderate pace. Now what we have done is we've created a relative intensity, a relative moderate intensity for 3 different pieces of equipment. So no matter what you picked, it's going to be the same for everybody. And that's what we want, is we want the class to realize we're all working the same, meaning it creates this unity. And the shame really is like, let's say, for example, like I could run a mile in 5.5 minutes. Well, what if you can't run a mile? Let's say your mile time is 9 minutes. Everybody's going to applaud me. Wow, look at that. You did 5.5 minutes. But the thing is I'm more impressed because you just ran a mile at the same intensity. It was a max effort, but I was done in 5.5 minutes and you went another 3.5 minutes longer than me. It's way more impressive that they went 9 minutes than my 5.5, yet I get the attention. That's a problem.
That's a really great way to look at that. I love it.
Well, imagine you're a kid and you're late in developing, and now you get this kid, is getting featured, and it's like, you don't, as a kid, you don't know what the problem is. And that's where some real destruction can occur. And you see that in adults, right? That, and we all as coaches have seen it. There is no difference between the insecurity of a teen and an adult who has lost their fitness, for job, whatever, stress, whatever reason, and they're trying to get back into it. And so we must limit negative comments, right? Insecurities, condescending remarks, because that will auger them into the earth just like a teenager, and they'll never come back.
As a 42-year-old child that's still developing, I completely understand here. And I'll say what you're talking about is, for you guys, is challenging to implement, but what you can do is have those private conversations. I think exactly what Chris just said. Hey, yeah, you took longer, but think about how much harder and for how much longer you just worked. Don't be afraid to have those private conversations and celebrate them at the end of class. If you wrap up with 5-10 minutes to go, as you should, give those shout outs. Hey, Chris, great PR on that run, but how about Sally, who pushed it for 9 minutes? Those are important to have. All right, Miles, did you take off that Mickey Mouse filter?
Sound better?
You still sound like Mickey Mouse. This is weird.
I switched to my phone.
Gotcha.
Hey, Chris, appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you a huge shout out. Before I took your course, I literally did CrossFit with the Jason Calipe method. I just went out strong and hope I hung on. And since then, all my times are down. All my times on all my benchmark WODs. And even at my gym, they call me the pacing coach.
Interesting that you've been taking this course at the same time, yet Chris gets the credit for your improvement, and I just get pushed to the side.
I taught squats today, and everybody said that was the best squat class I ever had, and that's for you, Jay. So,
I appreciate that.
Nice job, Jay.
My ego is not as small as Chris's.
You didn't help me anything with my benchmarks, but hey. Chris, I saw an article a few weeks ago on Morning Chalk Up talking about Matt Frazier, and I think they quoted you as saying that he has 13 gears, as you kind of put it, that he trains.
Yeah. And
that really interested me. And I really wanted you to kind of walk us through, like, how would he set up a WOD and kind of pace himself and kind of look for the correct stimulus for, say, a 50% effort. That's what I'm kind of...
Right. So the very first thing that all the elite athletes do is they look at a workout and they assess the time domain it's going to take them to finish, and that defines their intensity. And so if let's just say that I've created for all of you 13 different speeds, essentially the speeds that you are getting are your 10-second speed all the way to a 3-hour speed. And what you're going to do is you're going to develop that motor memory, as well as what it feels like at that intensity, right? The feel. And you're going to create those efficiencies at those various levels of intensity. You know what it feels like. And so you're not dependent on, a timer, a heart watch, a GPS. You know by feel what that particular time domain is. And so with Matt, his is the programming that he gets is very advanced. It's programmed based upon time. So he'll get workouts that focus on a 1 to 2 minute time domain. He'll get workouts that focus on 5 to 6. I'll send him 10 to 12. I'll send him 20 to 30. And every one of those time domains has 3 different workouts. So one will be for the track, one will be for the air runner, and one will be for the open road. And so what he'll end up doing based upon what he does in the gym, because I don't want to be involved, he'll pick target time domains. So he may get somewhere around 16 workouts in a week just in the movement of running, and he'll only do 2 of them. But what we focus on is time. It's a time domain, not distance. How fast can you move for a 20-minute time domain? A 30-minute, a 40, a 60, a 90, 120, 180. What is your jog recovery? What is your walk recovery?
Okay. Maybe to follow up that question, how can you fail at that? Like if I say I'm going to do a 30-minute WOD, of course I'm going to fall into a little bit more of a slower aerobic capacity.
Right.
But how do you know you've missed it?
Well, so you have to establish what they are, the speeds. So what are those intensities? You have to define them.
It's just basically my speed.
Right. So Fraser's, so I mentioned, so let's say you get 16 workouts. Every single one of those workouts has a target speed. Every one of them. So there's a targeted distance for the interval. There's a targeted speed for the interval. There's a targeted recovery, right? Duration and type of recovery. So some of his recovery is walk, some of it's jog, some of it's run. What are those speeds? And the same thing with the total volume of the workout. So that's why, like those athletes, it's very difficult to program because of the precision required. You're not creating. The easiest way for a coach to program precision is to not define the recovery. I want you to walk 100 meters for your recovery. Well, I've seen people walk 100 meters in 5 minutes. I've seen people also walking in a minute. It's a catch-all. So a new coach that is trying to figure out the relationship between volume, intensity, and recovery, my recommendation always is focus on your volume and focus on the speed, and then create a catch-all for your recovery for any mistakes you might have made. And that will help you learn how to manage recovery, like how to program it. That's the hardest thing that I do is building recovery into a workout, because it must be specific. It's as important as volume, as intensity. Because honestly, for most elite CrossFitters, it is the recovery that's their limitation, right? Their limitation is they just get tired. So if you have an athlete that's telling you that they just get tired, it is the recovery that's preventing them from doing more work. And most CrossFit coaches, what they will do is they'll say, oh, we're trying to do more. I need to do either more volume, or I need to make you work faster, a higher level of intensity. And that's not what they've just told you. They just said, I get tired. Fatigue is limiting my ability to do more work. So imagine if they are, let's say, doing a 100-meter sprint into a 300-meter jog. The question is how fast can they jog after that 100-meter sprint and be able to recover to repeat that over and over again?
So let me relate this back to something you said earlier about Conor McGregor. Where do you find that balance of he fades in rounds 2 to 5 versus he's just not recovering in the 1 minute between rounds?
So one of the things that you could watch on Conor, does he have a recovery protocol between rounds?
For example, this past fight, he stood.
He doesn't
between
have
the 2 rounds.
It's random. So every athlete needs to have, like a warm-up ritual, it needs to be a recovery protocol. So if I gave a workout and I said, look, that you're going to do a total of 12 by 2 minutes and you get 30 seconds of rest in between. But every 4, I'll give you 3 minutes. So you get 30 seconds after a 2-minute interval. What's your protocol? Do you even know what it is?
It's lay down, fetal position.
Which is totally good if it works. And so part of it is that what Conor needs to establish is the value, and he doesn't respect it, the value of recovery in there. He's not. He gets 1 minute and he's not focused on, for example, does he train and put ice packs on him in between sparring? Doubt it. And so part of it is that what Conor needs to recognize is that it's that between the round protocol, but in his training, the mistake is, and that's what makes CrossFit so tough. We don't know what the event is. So how do you train somebody for an event you don't know what it is? Conor knows that it's a possibility that he's going to have to actually be in the ring for 29 minutes. Train for 29 minutes and create gears based upon if it's 1 round, that's a speed. If it has to go 2 rounds, there's another intensity. Now 3 rounds, we're up to total of, if it's 3 rounds, he's got a total of 17-minute time domain. So what we do is we look at time and we define the level of intensity based upon that time. Just as if you were going to run 1 lap around the track as fast as you can versus 4 laps. You're establishing 2 different speeds. And so for all of us, what we do is we look at what is the targeted amount of time and then define the intensity around that. But if you've not trained that particular intensity based upon that time, your body won't recognize it and you will underperform.
So bringing it back to Miles's question, you mentioned Matt has 13 gears and his time can go from 0 to 120 minutes, as you alluded to. What should the average CrossFitter, how many gears should we be training for? How many time your average member doesn't care about.
Wow, great question.
Well,
yeah, I mean, seriously, because that's the truth. We're all driving.
The credit.
We're driving for efficiency, right? We don't have unlimited time. There's too many things we have to do. So what we want to do is we want to find intensities that maximize adaptation. And the thing is that we know that we've got 3 different muscle fiber groups. We know that we have 3 different energy systems. Nicely enough, the body dovetails those 3 energy systems with the 3 different muscle fiber groups perfectly. So what we do is we have 3 different core intensities along with a maximal sprint speed or a 1 rep lift, right? So that would be considered a 4th. And what we want to do is we want to actually target these 3 intensities so that we maximize those 3 different levels of muscle fibers and 3 different metabolic pathways. And so, from the aerobic side of it, right, that oxidative pathway or slow twitch muscle fibers, this would be considered an easy intensity. And so how do we define easy? Well, we need to define easy as we're maximizing the development of all of our slow twitch aerobic fibers. And what is that intensity? That intensity is somewhere around 180 to 185 minus your age. If you did a VO2 max test, that would be what we call a respiratory exchange rate of 0.85. It's the relationship where half of your energy is coming from carbohydrates and half of it is coming from fat. This aerobic threshold intensity this 180, 185 minus your age, which is mafetone. So Phil Mafetone is a good friend of mine back in the 80s, did a lot of his studies on me and people that I trained with. And the key is that you want to train this lower intensity because, like I said, half of your fuel is coming from fat. If I go faster than this intensity, now I am burning a greater percentage of carbohydrates over fat. I never want to lose the ability to utilize fat as a fuel. And so this intensity is very important. This is the only intensity that I would ever use heart rate. And it helps CrossFit athletes understand what easy is. It's a quick check. You can do a quick check, do heart rate, 6 seconds, multiply by 10, boom, there you go. Mine, I want to see between roughly 12 and 13, somewhere in that range. And so that's where I would target. Now, the next level up is where we have all of our intermediate muscle fibers, right? Our fast twitch 2A fibers, our hybrid fibers. These are fibers that can utilize oxygen as a fuel, and they can also use that anaerobic side without oxygen as a fuel. And what we recognize is that if we pick the intensity that utilizes all of those intermediate fibers, we are right near our lactate threshold, our maximum sustainable speed. And so that would be roughly based upon that, what I call a moderate intensity. I would put it somewhere in that 20 to 40 minute time domain intensity. It's not super fast. And then the next tier up would be targeting our aerobic capacity, our VO2 max. And this is what I would define as high intensity. So it's interesting to me that CrossFit, the methodology behind it, it says constantly varied functional movement, high intensity. Okay, how are we defining high intensity? Why is that even in there? What is the physiological adaptation of high intensity? We need to define it. And in my opinion, high intensity, the purpose of it is, from science and research, it drives VO2 max. It drives your aerobic capacity, your body's ability to bring in oxygen and utilize it as a fuel. And we recognize that time domains between roughly 6 and 8 minutes at maximal effort drives improvements in your VO2. And so that's how I would define it, is that what we're doing is we're creating a central and peripheral adaptation through this high intensity training. And the way we're defining it is, what's the best intensity to maximize VO2? And how are you defining that high intensity? It's that 6 to 8 minute time domain pace. So we could chop it up, like, if you ran a mile in 6 minutes, I could chop up that intensity, which is 22.5 seconds per 100 meters, and break it up into rest. But the key is, if I break it up into recovery, how much time are you at the targeted VO2 max intensity? Yeah, you get there in that 100 meters, maybe for a second or two, and now you rest, and then you go again, and then you hit it again, and now you rest. You would be much better served in doing a 6 minute unbroken mile, because the majority of that mile would be at the targeted high intensity. So those are the three that I would target, and that's the reasons why. Everything must have a purpose, because if you guys look, if an athlete doesn't understand why they're doing it, they're never going to do it.
I'm surprised you know my mile time, but yes, I totally agree with everything you've said there. So last two questions.
Yep.
We have to make sure we find time for Federico. Federico,
Yes.
Christian's going to go first. Make your question succinct. Sometimes he just rambles on. So Federico, this is your time. Short, specific, actionable. Christian, what's your question?
So when we talk about aerobic capacity, and even with energy systems, it's easy to sort of think about it in a vacuum, and we can talk about mile times and distance and time when we relate it to running. But how is that affected when we start introducing different modalities? So doing a mile run is different than doing a run in an hour is different than doing Murph.
Yep.
And so how does that affect that?
So you're right. Every movement is unique. And so part of it is that we need to help athletes understand intensity while they're doing a variety of movements. That's why I don't like a heart watch. I see Conor McGregor, for example, we're picking on him, but the truth is he wears a heart watch all the time. And I'm not sure what it's telling him, because every movement has its own unique VO2 and lactate threshold. And so what we need to do is we need to learn by feel what that is. And so part of it is that there is, the main way is your breath, your breathing. And I think that this is an area where we really need more coaches to understand, because when I look at an athlete, we need to make an assessment. Are they just uncomfortable because this is something they've never done before, or are they in a non-sustainable intensity? And so part of it is it's the breath that tells, right? When we breathe, it's a sign of demand for oxygen. Are we hyperventilating, or are we in control? And so understanding the breath is key. Now, I'll just quickly tell the group here. So this talk test, so I'm sure we've all heard of this talk test. There's two different types of talk test. If we're able to communicate like this and you are moving, then you would be considered at that aerobic threshold, easy pace that I mentioned earlier. All right. If you could talk. If you're just where it's kind of getting a little bit labored to say a 3-sentence paragraph. But if you have a very simple sentence like, I'm fit, I'm strong, I'm here to become a better person. If you struggle in saying that, now you are at that lactate threshold intensity. And if it's an hour-long workout, that's probably too hard for you, because remember, lactate threshold is something that's probably in that 20 to 40-minute time domain. So those two tests, and those are backed by science. You guys can look it up, talk test. Matter of fact, Jay, I'll find it and I'll send it to you. You can send it to your group.
Will do. Thank you. So,
Yeah. I'm going to have to jump on a call here in a sec.
okay, I want to give Federico a chance. But speaking on that, the concept of nasal breathing has become pretty well known in the CrossFit community. James Nestor's book, Breath.
Yep.
Real quickly, what's your feeling on that when it comes to everything you just said?
I think it has a lot of value. I think the key is we have a lot of different options as far as coaches to help create improvement. And is that the highest value of your athlete's time? So a good example of that is Froning. He heel strikes. Does he need to change his running form and risk potentially creating a whole host of other injuries? Or is there something, since his heel strike is not an overstride, should we focus on something else given our limited amount of time? And that's the thing, is that the coach really needs to decide, is that the highest and best use of the person? And so what I always look for first is safety. And then what I do is I create the hierarchy of priorities from there.
Last question, Federico.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for your time. I just wanted to know, how many steps per breath cycle should I take if I'm running at 1 mile pace at 180 steps per minute? And the same question for a 5K pace.
That was on my SATs, that same question.
So, yeah. So for me, and I would have to look at you, if you're getting very close to that lactate threshold intensity, and in a mile, you're going to go over it in that last lap for sure. So you are going to be in a non-sustainable pace in the last lap on a mile. So through laps 1 through 3, you're probably going to be on a 4 count. And in that entire last lap, you are going to be on a 3. Probably in the last 200 meters, you'll go to a 2 count.
So
in the 5,
one step inhale, 1 step exhale.
You will take 2 steps exhale, 2 steps inhale. So it will sound like this. It will go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, That's a 4 count, but it's 2 out, 2 in.
2 out, 2 in. Okay.
In a 5K, you're going to be at a 4 count the majority of the time until you decide to make your move to the finish line. And in that case, you're going to drop to a 3 count and then a 2 count and then lay on the ground. For me, I start accelerating in a 5K. I start building up my speed somewhere around 800 meters out, and I take a substantial risk at about 400 meters out. Okay?
Okay. On the rower?
Yep. Same thing. The thing is that a rower is tricky because you have to create that pattern, and where is that pattern going to be? So your stroke rate is one of the things that's going to dictate your breathing pattern. Remember, if you breathe on a 4 count at lactate threshold in running, does it match up with what you do in the gym? It needs to be consistent. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be predictable. And most people have randomized breathing based upon the movements they're doing. That awareness is important.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.